This dictator terrorized millions for decades and portrayed himself as the god of Iraq. Yet in his moments, he spent his time in a concrete cell, unaware that guards were preparing the worst death for him just outside. Here are the brutal final hours of Saddam Hussein, and subscribe to our channel now, because what's coming next will shock you. The brutality. Before we understand why Saddam suffered this fate that he did, we must recap the things that he did in the past. His reign wasn't just another authoritarian leadership, it was a systematic campaign of brutality that turned Iraq into a paralyzed nation in fear. Saddam's methods were designed not only to eliminate his enemies, but to traumatize entire populations into submission. You might remember the Anfal campaign of 1988, which stands as one of the most horrific genocides of the late 20s. Saddam's forces systematically exterminated the Kurdish population in northern Iraq, destroying over 4,000 villages and murdering between 50,000 and 182,000 civilians. However, this killing wasn't clean or quick, like a lot of other dictators did. It was pure brutality, from chemical weapons, including mustard gas and nerve agents that would be dropped on Kurdish towns, to firing hundreds and thousands of rounds. It was painful to see. In Halabja alone, 5,000 people died from choking on poison gas, and their bodies were found twisted in the streets. Mothers were clutching dead children. The torture chambers beneath Baghdad's intelligence buildings operated without industrial efficiency. Political prisoners were subjected to methods designed to maximize suffering, from electroshock, drilling into bones, and even acid baths, forcing witnesses to watch their family members being tortured and murdered. Saddam's government had no chill. Survivors described hearing screams echoing through underground corridors 24 hours a day. There was also the Dujail massacre, which was a crime that ultimately sent Saddam to the gallows, involving the murder of 148 Shia villagers following a failed assassination attempt. That's where his own downfall came into being. He was feeling immortal in the 20th century till the 21st century hit, and he saw his own demise. After the 2003 American invasion destroyed his regime, Saddam Hussein vanished for 8 months. The most wanted man in the world evaded capture while U.S. forces were searching relentlessly for him. Intelligence agencies tracked rumors, interrogated former regime members, and raided compounds, but Saddam largely remained a ghost. The breakthrough came from a minor tip that was done in December 2013. In December 2003, U.S. forces acted on intelligence from a former bodyguard who descended on a small farm near Tikrit, Saddam's hometown. What they discovered shocked the world. Hidden beneath a mud hut concealed under brick and dirt was a tiny underground hole that was barely large enough for a man to lie down. Inside, clutching a pistol but offering no resistance, was Saddam Hussein, crouching. The man who once commanded armies and lived in golden palaces was found in what everyone described as the spider hole. He emerged disheveled. His signature mustache was overgrown, and his hair was wild and unkempt, looking more like a homeless man than a former dictator. Soldiers searched for $50,000 in cash, AK-47 rifles, and virtually nothing else. The capture was anticlimactic. There were no dramatic shootouts, no defiance. Last stand was just a frightened old man who was crawling out of a hole in the ground, not believing what was happening. I'm doing a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway to celebrate when this channel reaches 1,000 subscribers. No action is required to enter. I'll randomly pick a winner once we hit the milestone. If you want to follow the journey or see the winner announcement, feel free to subscribe. The courtroom. Then came November 5, 2006, inside the Iraqi High Tribunal. Tensions gripped every corner of the back courtroom. We saw Saddam Hussein standing in a tailored black suit, with his posture so rigid that it would make anyone shake. Here is a dictator who was one of the most feared in the world, and now his eyes were scanning the room with the same defiance that defined his brutal reign. Judge Rauf Abdul Rahman leaned forward, gripping the official verdict document. His voice cut through the suffocating silence. He said, "Saddam Hussein al-Majid. This tribunal finds you guilty of crimes against humanity. The sentence is death by hanging." The words detonated like a bomb. Saddam thrust his hand into the air, shouting over the erupting courtroom, "Long live Iraq! Down with the Persian invaders!" Guards suddenly rushed towards him as his co-defendants joined the outcry, their voices colliding with the walls of the victims' families in the gallery. At first, this appeared to be a standard legal procedure where a war criminal was receiving his due punishment, but it was actually the beginning of a politically motivated execution that would expose deep sectarian wounds and reveal how justice had become just a tool for revenge. What made this verdict particularly controversial is the speed at which it moved from judgment to execution, almost as if it were unreal. Most death penalty cases involve years of appeals, but in Saddam's case, it was so fast-tracked, with shocking efficiency, which raised questions about whether this was justice or political theater. Rush to kill. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's office became a war room in the days that followed the verdict. Cabinet members, many of them Shia politicians who had suffered the worst under Saddam's Sunni-dominated regime, issued public statements dripping with barely concealed vengeance. They said that there will be no delays, no hesitation, no mercy. Parliamentary members, particularly those from Dujail, where Saddam had ordered the massacre of 48 Shia villagers, flooded media outlets demanding immediate action. This case is different because the powerful international voices urged restraints. American officials requested a delay, citing concerns about legal protocols and the risk of igniting a bigger war in the region. European governments called for clemency, and the Vatican pleaded for Saddam's life to be spared, but none of it mattered under a country that was ruled by nothing but hate. What made this pressure campaign worse is how nakedly political it was. Inside Baghdad's Green Zone, al-Maliki's advisors dismissed international concerns as interference. But the truth was simpler. The new Shia-dominated government wanted to publicly accuse and execute a Sunni dictator who had oppressed them for decades. Unlike the judicial system, which prioritized the whole process and went through a step-by-step procedure, this was revenge that was disguised as justice. The government needed to prove that it could deliver accountability, even if it meant rushing through appeals and ignoring international law. By late December 29th, the execution order was already signed, and the machinery of state was already here. Saddam Hussein would die on Iraqi terms, regardless of whoever objected. Nothing matters. No one could interfere in this scenario anymore, not even the United States itself. The Camp Cropper. Next came the American military facility known as Camp Cropper, which became Saddam Hussein's final home. His cell was only around 12 by 15 feet, which was a dramatic downgrade from the palaces he had once inhabited. The elite guards from a unit called the Super 12 maintained constant surveillance. There were 4 guards per shift, rotating every 8 hours, and they identified Saddam's identity as classified even today. The assignment was psychologically painful, despite the monotony. The cell contained only essentials: a metal bed bolted to concrete, a sink, a toilet, a desk. The fluorescent lights hummed 24 hours a day, erasing any natural sense of time. At first, the guards had maintained professional distance, but over the weeks, a small human movement crept through. Saddam would ask about their families or comment on the weather, and some guards even answered him. On the night of Deck 29, the atmosphere shifted. Guards who knew what was coming wrote longer entries in their logs, as if they were documenting history. As they were documenting history, the ordinary suddenly felt different. Unlike the condemned prisoners who would deteriorate mentally, Saddam maintained his unique composure. He would even pray 5 times a day, and his appearance was mostly neat. He even accepted his meals without any complaint. This shocked the guards and the world. Most people don't even know that several guards later struggled with their roles. They weren't guarding Saddam Hussein from the propaganda story. They were watching an old man calmly preparing for death, and the mental control he had was crazy. From there, things only escalated quickly into something that Saddam himself wasn't expecting. If you want to know what happens next, do subscribe to our channel. Lawyer's final visit. Finally, one evening descended on Camp Cropper when American guards escorted Khalil al-Dulemi through security checkpoints. He was Saddam's lead defense attorney and had been granted a final consultation to handle his personal affairs. In a small room watched by a lot of eyes, Saddam handed al-Dulemi's sealed envelope containing a handwritten will. The document's exact contents still remain private. They were never released to the public, but al-Dulemi later described the themes. He said that it called for Iraqi unity, blessings for his children, and messages to his followers. The absence of the family member during these final hours is quite self-explanatory. No wives, sons, or daughters were permitted to even say goodbye. The only visitor was his attorney, transforming what should have been an intimate family farewell into a cold legal transaction. What makes this meeting even more significant is that his lawyer's testimony about Saddam's demeanor was crazy. The lawyer expected to find a broken man. Instead, he encountered someone who had incredible self-composure, calm, and even philosophical about his fate. This case is different because Saddam treated his execution as his final political performance. He refused to show weakness, refused to beg, and refused to express remorse. Even in his will, Saddam maintained the posture of a defiant leader rather than that of a condemned criminal seeking forgiveness. The transfer. Shortly after midnight, the convoy departed camp proper under heavy security. It was at a classified location where American and Iraqi officials gathered for a transfer of custody that would shield the United States from direct responsibility. A senior U.S. military police officer was sitting across from an Iraqi Ministry of Justice representative. Between them were legal documents that remain classified today. Each page detailed the formal handover of Saddam Hussein from American to Iraqi authority. The paperwork was meticulously precise. Every line represented legal protection ensuring that Saddam died. It would be Iraq pulling the lever, not the United States. The final hours. At this point, the gallows were waiting for Saddam Hussein, and inside a fortified building, Iraqi officials led an execution chamber just for the former dictator. Judges, prosecutors, government ministries, and security personnel were chosen for loyalty to the Shia-dominated government. Saddam entered the room without hesitation. He even carried a worn Quran and had a dark suit. The cleric began reciting prayers, and Saddam joined him, speaking the Shahada. As he was being taken to the gallows, he turned towards everyone while laughing and saying, "Do you consider this bravery?" He asked while mocking the man who taunted him as a condemned prisoner. This case is different from other executions because it descended into complete chaos. His final word was Muhammad, spoken as the trapdoor activated. The executioner placed the noose around Saddam's neck. His lips continued moving in a final prayer. The sound of the drop echoed through the concrete chamber, and the rope snapped taut. Saddam's body jerked once and then hung motionless. The doctor checked for a pulse and found none. The recorded time of his death was approximately 6:05 am on December 30th, 2006. Within hours, a grainy video began spreading across Baghdad. Someone in the executioner's chamber had smuggled in a cell phone and recorded the entire hanging. The footage is raw and undetected, and it is devastating to the Iraqi government's narrative. The footage revealed that Saddam was executed on Eid al-Adha, the holiest day in the Islamic calendar. For many Muslims, particularly Sunnis, executing anyone on this sacred holiday was a profound interest. Baghdad's reaction after his death split entirely along sectarian lines. In Shia neighborhoods, everyone was celebrating, while in Sunni neighborhoods, people were quite sad. Some said they chose the date specifically because it was meaningful to them, but to millions of Sunnis, it was a calculated insult that confirmed their worst fear. If this changes how you see one of the most controversial executions in history, subscribe now, because we are about to cover many more in the future.